Hey y'all, I got some shit would need to be said, okay? In my previous post, I spoke on infection regarding inner wounds and how we can work to overcome it. I speak from mine and others' experiences as I recognize wounds of my own. I acknowledged my blockages and reflected enough to understand why they were there, but I had never publicly spoken out about it. A main blockage issue of mine is having a hard time trusting people, which this issue derives from a few places, and two of those places surrounds my parents and the ex, whom I thought I could trust and who is currently still hiding my biological kids. I've spoken about this issue on my podcast at anchor.fm, Everybody's Got a Story, and on this YouTube channel, but I don't often speak about how I continue to persevere despite what's happened and what continues to happen. Y'all, I never thought in a million years my kids would be hidden from me, let alone by an ex who I spent so many years caring for more than their own parents. I understand from a psychological standpoint why folks who are unhealed do certain things to people, but I've been nothing but good to the ex's family, hell, even my own family, although it didn't stop folks from abusing me. It's literally to the point where I don't even know if the ex is still alive or my biological kids. Where are my kids and where's the ex? Where did they disappear to? If something fraudulent transpired having to do with life insurance policies, stolen property, or a stolen business, I don't care about any of that. All I want is my kids. It took me a long time before I could even look at my kids' pictures because it hurt too much to see their beautiful faces and know I couldn't physically see their beautiful faces. These people wanted to crush me, to destroy me, to kill my spirit and remove my soul. But it didn't happen. I chose not to let it happen because that's how much I love my babies. Giving up on me means giving up on them. I'd never do that. Do you know how hard it is to stay self-motivated, especially not knowing where your beloved babies are, what's happening to them, and not have anyone who gives a fuck about it? Do you know how hard it is to have a mother who told me to my face while I still had my kids in my care that if she has anything to do with my kids getting taken away from me, that she'd be happy with that, that she'd be just fine with that, and said it with an evil smirk on her face? I had a free consultation with an attorney who looked into my child custody case, and I was shocked when the attorney reported back to me that my mother was a main factor which caused my case to go wrong. My mother is also the same woman who remains in denial about kicking my kids and I out of her rental home when we ran there seeking refuge from the physical, verbal, and emotional abuse rendered by the hands of the ex and the ex's family. Guess why my mother kicked my kids and I out? Over a man, y'all. Over a man who was already married to another woman, but he clung to my mother when her retirement slowly approached, then proposed to her even though he was still married, a few weeks after her retirement to secure his spot with her retirement money. My kids and I were there for 3 to 4 weeks. Yes, only a month. And I worked diligently to see about transferring my real estate license so I could begin working. But the visit was short-lived as my mother's boyfriend told my mother to kick me and my kids out and put us in a shelter. And my only brother was in on it with them. Kicking people out seems to run in my family, as my mother told me to kick my aunt's daughter out of the first home I bought in Las Vegas. My cousin doesn't know that, though, because I never told her. I was too busy protecting my mother, who seemed to work tirelessly to unprotect me and my kids. Honestly, I think my mother was jealous that my cousin got to stay in my new house before she did. Real dumb shit, right? Anyway, I spent a lot of money packing up my home and my kids, getting movers to move our belongings to a storage unit, and then driving my kids and I to what I thought would be a safety net with my mother for me to rebuild our foundation, only for it to be another disappointment. Can you imagine, after so many years, realizing that your own mother hates you, that your own mother is jealous and envious of you? This is the same mother who raised me to be independent, telling me she didn't want me depending on a man due to her own hangups of depending on my father for everything and having him control everything, only for my independence to be questioned and become a threat to her, to which any achievement I had in my adult life, she swore I had a man supporting me in order for me to get that achievement, forgetting that she raised me to be independent. She'd shoot down my entrepreneurship, the fact that I have a business mindset, and decided to take a not so traditional path by deciding to work for myself. And she was always jealous of the relationship my grandmother Willie Mae and I shared with one another. Don't get me wrong, I love my mother. because she brought me into this world. But I also acknowledge there's something called karmic parents, where they don't always have the interest or the best interest at heart for their child because of deeper issues they wish to not acknowledge. Unfortunately, it keeps people divided. That's why I always say I'm grateful to my parents because they did the best with what they had and what they knew. Because parents don't always know how to fix things. And sometimes the kids know better than the parent, which at times kids may have to parent their parents, right? Not everyone learns mental mastery. Many stay caught up in toxic cycles, and it doesn't mean you love them any less. It just means you understand the problem, and to the point where you must either distance yourself for your own sanity and or talk about it to bring about healing the way I'm doing right now. Talking about it to them won't work if they remain in denial, but publicly talking about it to garner opinions and views from others means it's unbiased and can force a person to finally, as Michael Jackson sang it, talk to the man in the mirror. So, all in all, y'all, it's been difficult trying to regain my footing when so many choose to rail against me. It truly feels like Lucifer himself has attacked me at every turn through the very people who claim to love me. Much of it, if not all of it, stems from jealousy and or greed. So, like I spoke about infection in my previous post, my family isn't exempt from the infection that so many other families suffer from. It would seem as if families are a conglomerate of narcissists and empaths, and the empaths are usually the black sheep of the family. Kind of like that story about the sister who threw acid on her sister's face because she was tired of hearing about how beautiful her sister was. So I guess screwing up her sister's face would mean she didn't have to hear all the compliments anymore. Isn't that something though, that she didn't think she needed to work on herself to figure out why she was so jealous and envious of her sister, but instead the only way she felt to solve the problem was to take her sister's physical beauty away. Another person's beauty triggered the infection of jealousy within her so much it caused a negative impulsive physical reaction, which is usually labeled as some kind of mental illness. And folks wonder why I choose to keep to myself. Shit. When you've been through enough and seen enough, you tend to not want to stick around to witness any more bullshit. Like, how much abuse can one person take, right? Then you erect boundaries in order to still deal with them because you realize you need boundaries to protect yourself. But eventually you come to an understanding that boundaries don't work anymore and you just gotta go. So you make the decision to fly solo dolo, and your life gets lighter, you become happier, and your creativity increases. And it's because you bring yourself peace, you bring yourself self love, and that, darling, is worth more than gold. But I digress. I persevere by keeping my kids at the forefront of my heart, by never giving up hope of finding them, by laughing when something is funny, by continuing to be unconditionally loving, kind, while never allowing my heart to turn cold. I self love myself and give myself what others don't or can't. And in doing that, I maintain my balance of mind, body, and soul. Being balanced is one of the best gifts I can give to myself and my amazing, beautiful babies, Winter and Laker, whom I love more than they'll ever know. I'm sure the infected ex is feeding my kids all kind of lies about how I don't want them and I don't care about them. But if that were true, why have I been speaking out about what's happening for so long? Why every 3 months do I submit motions to the court in order to figure out what's going on with no response? Why have I reached out to government officials for help, which seems to fall on deaf ears? Why is my evidence being refuted without being seen? Sounds like to me there's a bigger entity in this and has their own agenda, because if not, why would the system be protecting predators? Is it because those running the system are predators too? I don't know. All of this transpired from people being infected, y'all. Infected with jealousy, envy, greed, selfishness, abandonment wounds, mother father wounds, sexual abuse wounds, and the list goes on. Eventually, you learn to not expect anything from anyone that they cannot give to themselves. If your mother or father hates you, it's because they hate something within themselves. So they can't give you the love if they don't have it to give to themselves. And that's why learning how to heal and unconditionally love oneself will always be the best decision and greatest gift to give to yourself and to others. Comment, y'all.